Right, so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I currently got a cybersecurity business and a couple of other small startups, but over the past several years I've been looking in depth, because I'm a business analyst, at the impact, the economic impact of Brexit on the UK, on UK businesses, and what it means, how people have to react to it, how businesses have to react to it. So that's what I'm going to cover tonight. There's a book by a guy called Jim Collins called Good to Great, and it's not a great book, but it does have a few interesting homilies in it, one of which is face the brutal facts. Businesses have to be able to understand what might impact their business environment, and this is everything from fire, flood, earthquake, through to, as we now know, Brexit. I'm not going to give you any financial predictions. I'm going to just relay one little thing, which is that the government's own predictions in its the hidden secret studies that it has say that in the worst case of no deal Brexit, the impact will be about 8% of GDP. To give you a comparison, the impact of the financial crash in 2008 was 2% of GDP. So this is potentially 4 times worse. That means we're almost certainly going to have a big recession. So businesses have to create contingency plans in order to deal with this, and contingency plans always work on the worst possible case. You have to plan for the worst case. In the last recession, there were people were too conservative. They weren't aggressive enough in their contingency planning. We survived because we had a very senior financial chairman who told us exactly what was going to happen, and we just about recovered at the time. So the most important thing about contingency planning is keeping the company solvent, keeping it going, and that's what I'll cover in this. In that 8%, only 1% is tariffs. All the rest is non-tariff barriers. UK businesses have been very good at taking advantage of the UK's freedoms, the freedom of movement, the freedom of movement of capital, and the freedom of moving goods around. And what that's meant is that, as we heard from Rosa, we both specialise, so there are lots of things we no longer do that we used to do. We've become very good at doing other things that rely on the freedom of movement, etc. So businesses like car manufacturing, that relies on the free movement of goods, the fast free movement of goods, in order to do just-in-time manufacturing. That just-in-time manufacturing takes a huge amount of cost out of the storage of parts and the progress of parts through the system in order to keep the cost of cars down. It's the same with aeronautical manufacturing. We rely very much on free movement there and on free movement of goods. The fresh goods, flowers, meat, fruit industries, agricultural industries in general, they rely on the fast movement of goods. A lot of our goods, about 50% of our food, comes in from Europe. It won't be available fresh immediately after Brexit. In fact, it's likely to take several days to get through. So all of the fresh food that we currently rely on coming in from Holland and from Spain is going to stop. Finance relies on passporting. And on free movement. It's a services industry, so people will no longer be able to go to Europe when they need to. In my industry, I need to be able to get customers to an incident, to get people to an incident within about 2 hours. So I've got to be able to get people on a plane and over to the customer to deal with what is usually a growing crisis. I won't be able to do that after Brexit. So I will have to put people in Europe. So, what does that mean for the UK economy? Brexit is like putting a wall all of the way around the UK that costs money and time to cross in both directions, both out of the UK in exports and into the UK in imports. That wall is 8%. It's all of those non-tariff barriers, etc. So it differs for different businesses. Different businesses will have different effects. Some will not see much of an effect. So some businesses I talk to that, for instance, in luxury goods, they don't have much of an effect. I've got another business I deal with that is basically importing goods from China to various countries. It manages the process, but it doesn't actually import and export. But what businesses are going to have to do is work out how to deal with that wall. And one of the things they will do is they will stop exporting. They'll look to work out ways to avoid crossing the wall. And that means businesses like Jaguar Land Rover and the Chinese car manufacturers, they will move manufacturing. They're already in the process of doing so. Businesses that service those companies, they are, one of them I'm advising at the moment, they are swapping contracts with each other, swapping contracts and technologies, so that the tier one manufacturers that supply just in time to the car manufacturers are doing it all within country. That means they're not exporting. Now, we have a balance of payments issue. We currently import more than we export. And we sustain that balance of payments by, well, part of it's paid for by our exports. So if our exports drop, we can no longer afford to import as much. The other part is covered off by selling the UK's assets, and we've been doing that for many years. We eventually run out of assets to sell. At that point, the economy crashes. There is no other option available. So, Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England, said that we rely on the kindness of strangers. So we've relied for a long time on the kindness of strangers, believing that the value of the UK's assets is worth investing in. After Brexit, it will be a fire sale, because that's all that's left. So what are businesses doing about it? Well, EasyJet has already left. It's moved its headquarters to Austria. Thomas Cook, if you read their conditions on travel after Brexit, their terms and conditions, they say, we do not guarantee any refunds. They're treating it as they're putting it in exactly the same category as a disaster. So, French hauliers are refusing to accept contracts for transport to the UK after Brexit. So, lots of businesses are having to react now. They don't have time to wait to find out what happens to Brexit. They have to deal with worst case conditions. So if anyone needs any information to help them plan, I've got lots. I've got huge amounts of information that can help you understand exactly what it will take to survive Brexit. Businesses should be thinking about consolidation. They should be thinking about whether to lose staff. You should be worrying about whether you can retain staff. A number of businesses have moved overseas purely because they can no longer get staff, the foreign staff that were populating their business in the UK. I know a number of businesses like that, where the expertise actually comes from different countries to operate a business here. So there's lots of things that can be done, but we have to plan for the worst case. Thank you.